Well, hey everyone, and welcome to KPC Underground. Aaron here. This is the podcast we do from underneath our stage here at Kirkland Performance Center. And today I'm very excited to be joined by one of my coolest friends over here. It's ZOF, DJ, songwriter, producer, singer extraordinaire. And so thanks so much for sitting down with us and chatting.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I'm super excited to be here.
So you're doing a workshop for us on February 24th. So if you're watching this and it's before February 24th, sign up for this workshop because this is going to be so much fun. We're doing it over at our KPC Studios building, and Zof's going to be talking about their process for making music and taking us through a song and kind of the creation of that and just how they use Ableton. And it's going to be a ton of fun. And I'm looking forward to learning a lot because I don't know that much about electronic music creation. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm super excited. Awesome. It should be really fun. Yeah. I haven't entirely ironed out exactly what I'm going to do yet, but I have a basic idea of what I'm going to go over and kind of refining it over the next week.
Yeah.
So.
Should be tons of fun. You know, I got to know you a little bit just from going out to the club, and I would see you DJing, and I didn't know that much about DJing, but I really loved what you did, and I felt like when I learned that you started out on classical piano, it sort of didn't surprise me because I felt like you're just very, I don't know, musically intelligent, kind of the way you were like transitioning songs and stuff. And so I just want to say I appreciated that. And I wanted to ask you actually, how did that, starting out on classical piano, what was the transition like to get into electronic music, and what was that all about?
I started out playing classical since I was a little kid. And I just kind of was always really into all kinds of music. Like I wasn't just hard classical. Yeah. Although that was like what I was really into when I was young. And then in middle school, I started learning to play guitar because I wanted like a little bit more casual music experience too. And then in high school, I kind of transitioned to more like indie singer-songwriter stuff, and I would perform at like my high school open mics and either like playing covers or sometimes a song that I wrote, which like back then they were not very good. But you have to get all the bad songs out of the way to make good songs.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I was like kind of a little emo kid. So I would sing my little sad Phoebe Bridgers type songs at school. And then in high school, I started getting really into electronic music, like mostly was listening to like dubstep and drum and bass and stuff. Because I was also really into like metal, so I feel like that transitioned to the drum and bass and stuff.
I can see that.
Higher energy stuff.
Yeah, sure.
Also, I feel like metal makes sense with the classical background.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because most metal bands, like somebody's classically trained in there. Right. So yeah, that's kind of how I like transitioned into EDM world. Yeah. But I didn't start DJing until I was in college, and I just had friends who DJ'd, and I was at a party, and I was like, that looks fun. Like, I could do that. Right. So, and I did. And my friend taught me how to DJ at a house party, and I was pretty good at it right away. So I was like, this is awesome. This is fun. Projections, imagined rejection. What's the disconnect? Psychosomatic, try not to panic. Coming for your neck. So that's interesting because that whole world, I come from a musical background, learned piano and everything and played instruments. But the whole electronic music world and DJ world just seems like it seems like magic. There's just those areas of your knowledge that are kind of like you're ignorant about. And so I like that it's just sort of like magical and everything. But so DJing, you said like you didn't really take it seriously at first. Obviously now you've put out, an entire album of original music that's electronic music that you actually play. Like when you go to see you DJ, you put in a lot of your songs there, which totally fit with other house, things that you kind of mix in and out and everything seamlessly.
How did the songwriting, I guess, integrate into that new sort of electronic music world? And was that just really natural, or did that take a while to sort of evolve?
That's a good question. I think it's kind of both. Like, it kind of came naturally and took a while to evolve, because when I first started DJing, and I liked what you said about it kind of seeming magical, because I feel like entering like DJing and producing, there is kind of like a barrier to entry there.
Right.
Just if you're not in the right circles or whatever, it's hard to access because it's expensive and all that. But I started DJing just for fun. So I would DJ at my friends' house parties or whatever. And I had a lot of friends who were DJs because I'd got pretty deep into the music scene towards the end of high school, early college.
Right.
But the songwriting thing, when I started producing in 2016.
Yeah.
And I was in college at the time, so I was just trying to learn what I could, when I could. And a lot of the first songs that I made in Ableton were I've listened back to them now, and they're actually good. They're good ideas, but the execution just wasn't there because I didn't technically know what I was doing well enough yet.
Sure.
And so I always wanted to incorporate more songwritery elements into my music, but I just didn't know how to merge the two worlds yet.
Right.
So over the years, as I got a lot more proficient with Ableton, I wanted to do more vocal work on my tracks.
Yep.
And since I'd already been writing music and stuff for a long time, it was pretty natural to incorporate that. But the learning curve for how to get that all to be cohesive and sound good,
make it sound good,
was pretty steep. So when COVID happened and we were in lockdowns and everybody was locked away, that was kind of when I really went deep into it and was I'm gonna just do whatever I want and get really good now. Because I released some music before 2020, and they were good. They were more clubby, tech house tracks kind of thing. So when COVID happened, I was well, nobody's really going out, nobody's really going to the club, so I'm just gonna make some weird stuff now. And it turned out to be one of the COVID sucked, obviously, but that was really good overall. One of the really good things that came out of it was having time and not feeling pressured.
Right.
You know? So that gave me a little bit more freedom to explore the songwritery side of things. So.
Interesting. By the way, it's raging up there. There's a Ukrainian band that is just absolutely shredding sound checking up there. So hopefully we're able to tune that out and everything, but we're here. Speaking of, just that songwritery side, your album, Nostalgic Premonitions, came out a few months ago or so now.
Yep.
And I absolutely love the record and was pleasantly sort of surprised when I heard it, how many kind of emotional, slower, kind of I love a sad girl song. And so I love the sad banger. Talk about how that came about. Obviously you started writing it during COVID and things, but I read somewhere else you never really intended for it to be I'm making my debut album, but more and more songs sort of started to pour out of you, and then it became that. But talk about that process a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, so the first track that I made that ended up being on the album was Wi-Fi, which is one of those slower, kind of sad girl, introspective songs. I just was making that because I wanted to kind of experiment with different genre.
Yeah.
And I had the idea for the lyrics for that pretty quickly after I like started making the beat, I guess.
Yeah.
And then that song, I finished it for the time being and just kind of had it hanging out. Like, I didn't know what I was going to do with it because all of my releases up till that point were like tech house, and I just didn't really know what to do with it.
Yeah.
So I was like, I either need to make a bunch more stuff like this or just it's like, I don't know, maybe someday it'll come out, but I don't know. And then the second song that I made that ended up on the album was Let's Be Friends, which is another one that's kind of poppy, sad vibes. So let's be friends. And that one was like, when I made it in like 2020, it did not sound that good. Like it sounded really amateur. That one, I basically, when I decided to do the album, I took it and like reconstructed it from scratch pretty much like 2 years later.
Okay. That's hard.
Yeah.
That's hard to do.
There was certain pieces that I kept in there, but like the bass line sounded all flimsy and I had to replace that, and like the vocals were, I needed to re-record most of them, and because I just like Wi-Fi, I recorded the vocals on like a little webcam mic.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. And then I got a real microphone. I got a Shure SM7B and like re-recorded a bunch of stuff for Wi-Fi, but I actually kept some of the webcam takes as layers in there because they just sounded right. So I was like, okay, we'll use this.
Probably a kind of filtery, like not hi-fi sort of, I don't know, just interesting. Yeah.
So like I was dabbling around with songs like that, and then I made a couple more. I can't remember which ones they were, but I still didn't really know what to do with them because I was like, this is kind of my like lockdown sad girl music. Like, and I showed it to some friends and they were all like, you need to do something with this. This is really good. And I was like, oh, it's actually good. Because like I have that imposter syndrome that's like everything, if it doesn't fit in like a little box that people expect, I'm like, oh, what if everybody hates it?
Yeah. And to be fair, it is different than, I mean, like I said, I was sort of surprised when I heard it based on like when I had seen you before, just like banger after banger at the club, just hearing that was like, that was just really cool, and just to hear that other side of it. So, it was honestly kind of scary to release it because I did not know what the general reception would be, and I knew that people were kind of expecting more club music, and like some of the tracks on the album I play in my sets, like they're club safe, you know. I don't cry, they must be clear in my eye. Don't let down, fall from this height would be tough. Some of them are a little bit too melodic or a little too sad girl vibes for the club, but I ended up working with my current manager like once stuff started kind of opening back up, and I showed him all those songs and he was like, this is your best music. Like you have to do something like with this. And I was like, okay, maybe I'll make like a whole album. Yeah, amazing. So I mean, you touched on a bunch of stuff there. I think like I wanted to ask you about just your process for songwriting. We're doing this workshop coming up, you know, in a couple weeks, and I'm curious, like when you have an idea for a song, whether it's a sad girl thing or like it's just a club banger or whatever it is, how does it start in your process of production? Because you do like everything yourself. You record it, you like produce it, you mix it, that's crazy. And so how does that, I imagine you're kind of thinking of all of those elements, you know, you're thinking of the end as you go, but how do you get started with something like that? Is it a melody? Do you build it off of a beat, or is it different each time? It's
kind of different each time. Like sometimes I like my notes app in my phone is unhinged. There's like, it's like a lyric graveyard. Yeah. Like when it'll be 2 a.m. and I'll have like some weird idea and I just write it down in my notes and most of it's crap. And then sometimes I'll find something and I'm like, oh, that's perfect. But yeah, sometimes I have a melody idea or like a chord progression. Like if I'm just kind of noodling around on the piano, sometimes I'll come up with something like that and start there. Sometimes I open up Ableton and I just start with like a kick and a hi-hat and I build a drum beat and that becomes a thing. So it just really depends on kind of what my mood is. Like if I'm feeling more moody, I'm probably starting with a melody.
Right.
And if I'm feeling more hype or whatever, then I'm probably starting with a beat.
Right. But it's cool to be able to have those tools that you now, like you said, you've had the taste kind of for a long time in terms of like, I know how I want it to sound, I know how I want it to feel, but now you have kind of the tool set to be able to go, okay, like I want to make like just whatever, like a club, like a song that everyone's just going to jump up and down to or whatever. And so I got the tools for that. I know like if I do this kick here and if I do this whatever, you kind of have the language to be able to do that. But
yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It's like now I feel like when I have an idea, I'm confident that I can execute it. Whereas like years ago, I would have a really good idea, but just like not be able to bring it home.
Right.
Or like certain elements of it would be perfect and other parts were like, kind of amateur. But so it's been really cool because I feel like this last like year, I feel like I've really hit my stride in all that. Yeah. Because recently I've been making like a bunch of different genres. Like, I have a bunch of house music tracks that I like need to finish. But then I'm like, what if I like made dubstep for now? Like that's kind of what I feel like. So, but it's like exciting because I feel like I can satisfy all those little cravings for something different now.
Right. That's cool. And and then you could just put whatever. You could put out your dubstep album and then your house album or whatever. Yeah.
People are always like, are you going to start a new alias? And I'm like, no. It's all ZOF.
It's all ZOF. Yeah. I mean, speaking of that, well, let's go back to like technically, I like to ask just like what gear you're using. So you're using Ableton for your software. You said you have an SM7 that you sing into.
Yep.
That's your main microphone that you do all your vocals with. Your vocals on your record are really cool, ethereal, floaty. That's kind of how your voice, I've heard you play just singing little songs on Instagram and stuff. And that's kind of how your voice sounds just in real life, to listen to you. It's kind of that floaty voice. But what is your approach? Do you have like a go-to thing you always do to your vocals? Or do you approach it differently every time? Or is there kind of a go-to like vocal chain or a way that you process them when you're making tracks?
Yeah, definitely. I have like a system that I usually start with, and then if I want like something really different sounding, I'll tweak that. But I always, EQ. Gotta cut some of the low range. I'll usually boost the high end because the response on my microphone in particular, like it's
not a super bright microphone.
Better, it's a little bit better for talking. Right. So like I'll boost the highs a little bit.
It's that podcast microphone that everyone uses. Yeah. So yeah.
But I mean, like, it's really versatile. I really like it.
It's great. Michael Jackson, Thriller, and many records throughout history. I mean, that's like probably the most popular microphone.
Yeah, it's a very good like neutral microphone. Yeah. But yeah, so I'll EQ, and then I try to just get like a good take that's kind of level in volume, but without having to like
mess around with stuff after. Yeah.
But sometimes you get your best take is like has some weird volume variation. So I'll like go through and kind of even that out manually.
That,
Usually I'll use auto-tune a little bit, but like really gently so that it's not like T-Pain or something. Yeah. But like just to kind of homogenize the sound, I guess. Cause like I'll sing in key and stuff because auto-tune doesn't really work if you're not.
Right.
But I'll use auto-tune like on a really gentle speed and setting so that it just kind of tidies it up a little bit. Unless I want something to sound really tuned, then I'll do that.
I was going to say, I noticed it. I feel like on one of the later songs on your record, it's like intentionally like, we're like hitting notes here, you know, or whatever. So you're using it as an effect rather than like, I'm correcting a mistake here, sort of a thing.
Yeah, and I feel like in electronic music, like it's all, you know, digital. So if all the instruments are like perfectly in tune, and then your voice has some like kind of natural wavering to it. That sounds really good with like acoustic music or indie music or whatever, but then in the club track, sometimes you just need it to be like perfect, like exactly in tune. So even if it's like a few cents off one way or the other, it'll sound kind of weird. So sometimes I'll tune it more, and then I'll usually saturate it a little bit, like with like a gentle, like kind of tube saturation, just to make it a little more rich. Reverb
always.
I'll like record with reverb on.
Okay, that's
so that when I listen to it, because when you hear yourself just singing like completely dry with no reverb on it, to me, I'm always like, that sounds so bad. What's wrong with me? And then I just put reverb on it. I'm like, oh wait, no, that was actually that was a good take. And then I'll adjust it later so that it's not like too verbed out. But
it is like a psychological game. It can be, you got to kind of be like your own best friend when you're, because you got to kind of like pump yourself up sometimes when you're doing these things. So whatever tricks that you can do to make yourself go, no, I'm good, or whatever it is, like, because those games are always, I don't know, it's always going up there, you know. So
and I feel like it's harder to record yourself sometimes because you're going to be way more critical of your own thing. So there's been times where I've recorded something and like done a bunch of work to it, and I'm like, I still think this sucks. And then I show it to somebody else and they're like, this sounds amazing. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'm just incapable of hearing it for real, but now I've gotten better at that, like over time. And just like, it's kind of like a nice self-care kind of thing. Because now I'm like, my talk in my head about it while I'm doing it is a lot nicer to me. Like, I'm not like you messed that up. It's like, oh, okay, we'll just like do it again. Like,
I have found that very much. I've had very much the similar experience myself, where especially the first time, if someone's in the studio and I'm producing something or whatever, it's the first time you're hearing their own voice. I'm like, oh man, they're like going through it right now. Like, I just know what they're feeling, because you're like, is that what I sound like? You know, and you're just way hyper self-critical because you don't, because we don't hear our own voices like we hear them in our heads. Even just scientifically,
it's totally different.
You're hearing your own chest cavity vibrate, you know, and things. And so when you hear it outside of yourself, it's almost this alien, like, strange thing. And it does take a while to get used to it, and especially to come to actually like it. To go, okay, I actually like how I sound, you know. And so,
and I used to like be like paranoid about people hearing me while I was recording, because I'm like, they're gonna hear me like do a bad take. And the self-criticism has just gone a lot lower. I think it's because like you do it enough to where like you finally reinforce the idea that like you don't suck. That like it's pretty good actually. So
I've seen that. What's that meme that's like the creative process? It's like, this is awesome. I don't know about this. This sucks. I suck. And then like, this might be, okay, I think this might be okay, or whatever. So you finally come full circle with like, okay, you can have an actually objective view, but it does take, it takes doing it over and over and over again. And so, and
you're going to make a bunch of stuff that does actually suck. Sometimes.
Let yourself and
that's okay.
Do that.
That's okay. So there's a graveyard of abandoned projects that maybe parts of them are okay, but like some of them straight up suck. Like I was going through, my friend was at my house a couple weeks ago, and we were going through like old beats of mine on my computer, And like we found a couple of them that I named really stupid things too, that I was like, this is named because I don't need to come back to it. We opened it up and we were both like laughing. Yeah. And I was like, what was I on when I made that?
That was just that's just part of the process, I guess. But yeah. Anyway, I have kept you too long already. Where can people go if they want to learn about your music and your dates that you're playing, and go to see you play live somewhere? Where can people go to check you out?
So I have a website. Mm-hmm. It's zofmusic.com.
We'll put that on the screen.
And then I'm at ZOF DJ on all the social media platforms. So I got Twitter, I got Instagram, TikTok.
Yep.
What else even is there?
All the
things.
Yeah. Any shows coming up that are local?
Yeah, my next show is on March 1st.
Cool.
At Showbox Soto, and it's with Walker and Royce and Omnom and Ms. Worthy.
Great. So go check that out. Again, if you're listening to this before February 24th, 2024, 2/24/24, go and sign up for ZOF's workshop, which is at KPC Studios.
Yeah,
come learn a little bit more about how to create cool electronic, moody, sad girl music that you can also play in the club.
Thanks so much. If you have any questions that you want answered specifically, just send them to me, DM me or something, and I will try and address that.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sitting down with us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us for KPC Underground. If you're enjoying this podcast, please consider supporting KPC at kpcenter.org/donate. Your generosity helps us keep this and other programs going at Kirkland Performance Center. Be sure to check out our website for the latest events coming up. And hey, we'd also love to hear from you. Please rate our podcast, like, subscribe, comment, do all that stuff. And if you have a specific question or an idea for a show, email us at podcast@kpcenter.org. Thanks for listening.